Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing for you guys the read alouds that we've done this school year. Welcome back. If you're new to my channel, my name is Deanna and I am a stay-at-home homeschooling mom of 5 kids. And today I'm going to be sharing with you the read alouds that we've done this school year and kind of sharing my thoughts. Some of them I definitely recommend, some of them kind of missed the mark for our family. But today's video was also inspired by my friend Katie from Life in the Mundane. She recently hosted a collab with some other homeschool moms and they all shared their read alouds from this past school year. So if you want to see Katie's video, I will link it in the description box. So thank you, Katie, for inspiring today's video. All right, so I'm going to jump in. I have a list of books here on my phone, so I might be looking down occasionally. But I went ahead and listed, kind of broke them down into the books that we really enjoyed versus the ones that we didn't really enjoy for whatever reason. So I think I'm going to start with the ones that kind of missed the mark, and then I'll end off the video on a high note sharing the books that we really enjoyed. I will say that this school year has been a little different for us. I had a baby back in June, so I had a newborn right before the new school year, so that was a little bit unique. And then we also were planning our overseas move for like the last 8 or 9 months as well. And so a lot of the books that we did, actually the majority of the books on this list were actually ones that we listened to on Hoopla. So I guess technically it's still a read aloud, but I didn't read it, someone else did. So all of these books I think are ones that we listened to on Hoopla, maybe with the exception of 2 or 3. So all right, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. The first book that I want to mention on the list of books that we didn't love or didn't care for was the book Snow Fox. This book was recommended on the Good and the Beautiful's book list, so that's why I gave it a try. I will say it was a very inspiring story. It's a book about a boy and his grandfather is ill and he's trying to raise money to help pay off his grandfather's taxes so that they can keep their farm. And he's got a dog and he enters into this sled race, and if he wins first prize he'll have the money that he needs to pay off all of his grandfather's debt. So it's a very inspiring story. It just had a very unexpected ending that kind of left us all unhappy. I'll put it that way so that it's not a spoiler. But yeah, the ending was not what we were expecting, and so for that reason we were all just kind of like, why did we read that? So for us that was kind of a no. All right, the next book that kind of missed the mark for us was a book called Seaman, and it looks like this here. And this was actually historical fiction, so it's based around a real-life dog that traveled with Lewis and Clark on their expedition. And so it's based off of their diaries and things that actually took place. So for that reason, I thought it would kind of tie in a little bit with history. But we only made it probably about halfway through this audiobook before the kids kind of lost interest. I don't know if it was a little dry, just not compelling. I don't know. For whatever reason, we just kind of lost interest in it. So we just decided to put a pause on that one and we decided to listen to something else. So maybe we'll come back to that one when we're doing American history and try it again when the kids are a little older. But for this year, that one just didn't really resonate with the kids, so we decided to put a pause on that one for now. So the next book on this list is the book The One and Only Ivan, what it looks like here. This book is, from what I can remember, about a gorilla who is kind of on display at, is it like a, I want to say it's like a roadside attraction kind of thing. And that's all he's ever known. And I don't know, it goes into various detail about things that he does and things that he eats and things that he likes to do and doesn't like to do. But again, I don't know, the kids just were like, I don't really like this story, or this is boring, or it's gross, or it's weird, and they just didn't like it. So again, we just decided, let's just pause this one and move on to something that we enjoy more. So that was another one this year that we didn't finish. The next book was called Miracles on Maple Hill. This was another one that was recommended by The Good and the Beautiful. I will say this story, again, was very inspiring. The premise of the book is it was about the father. He had been away at war. He comes back kind of a changed person. He's having a lot of post-traumatic stress and depression and having a hard time reintegrating with his family. Bursts of rage and just depression, and just he's really struggling. And so the family decides to move out to, I don't know if it was the grandmother's house out in the country, an extended family member's house out in the country. And so they all move there together and they're kind of fixing it up. And it's sort of all the things that transpire for the family while they're living here on Maple Hill. And, there's a lot of really cool things that happen, but for me, some of the sour things kind of overshadowed the nice things. For me, there was a lot of sibling rivalry between two of the main characters, the brother and the sister, and there was just a lot of name calling and put downs and just rude thoughts, and just, I don't know, it was just so much yuckiness of the brother and the sister fighting all the time and saying mean things and thinking mean thoughts. And I was just like, why am I putting this into my children's head? It's not necessary. So for me, that was like, I could have done without all the sibling rivalry. So for me, I wouldn't recommend the story based on that alone. I thought that was probably one we could have skipped. But it was interesting enough to at least finish the book. So, it had a nice ending, but for me, I'm like, in retrospect, we probably could have skipped that book. Next one. Okay, the last book on this list is the book Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. And this one was like highly recommended by a lot of different websites and sources. Again, it is historical fiction, so it's based on the life of Nathaniel Bowditch, I believe is his name. This was actually one book that we did actually read, and I think we made it maybe a little over halfway through the book before we just lost steam. Again, the kids were like, no, I don't want to read that one, or let's read something else, or it was interesting. I think that the historical character was very, very intelligent, fascinating person, completely self-taught, self-motivated to learn and to better himself, and just extraordinarily intelligent. And so for me, I found that very interesting. I think that I would have enjoyed continuing to read this book, but for the kids, they just kind of started getting a little bored with it. So I think if I wait another year or two, that we might try this one again later on and see if maybe they connect with it a little bit more and have a little bit more patience in continuing to read this story. So I wouldn't say that this was a bad book. I just think that it's one that we're going to come back to later on. All right, so those are the books that kind of missed the mark for us this year for various reasons. So now I'm going to jump into the list of books that we really did enjoy this year. All right, so the first one on this list, I think everybody's familiar with by now, is the book The Wild Robot. This one is one that last year, tons of my homeschool mom friends were recommending. We love this book, it's amazing. And this is one that I actually bought the paperback version and read it out loud with the kids, and we did. We loved it. It was a total page turner. Every time a chapter ended, the kids were like, keep reading, we want more. And so we burned through this book super quick. It was an excellent read, funny, just sucks you right into the plot and makes you want to find out what's going to happen. Really excellent book. So we definitely enjoyed The Wild Robot. And now we've recently started reading the sequel to the book, which is Wild Robot Escapes, I believe. And so far, we're not too far into that one yet, but we have been enjoying it so far. So I would definitely recommend both of the Wild Robot books if you haven't already read them. All right, the next book is called Snow Treasure. This book was really good. We listened to it on Hoopla. The premise of this book is it is during I believe it's World War II, and it's been so long, I'm trying to remember where it's set. I can't remember exactly where the book takes place, but essentially they're in this fishing town, and they are in danger of the Nazis coming in and stealing their gold from their bank. So everyone kind of joins together and comes up with a secret plan to use the children in their town to smuggle the gold from the bank to a secret hiding place, and then they're going to get all the gold onto a ship and take it to America for safekeeping. And it's based on a true story, and so that for me makes it even more compelling and interesting, and it is really well written. There are some intense moments in this story. Obviously, the different interactions with the Nazi soldiers, some of them are more positive, some of them are more negative, and so there are going to be some opportunities for difficult conversations and things, but I think in the big picture, it was a really, really good read, and the kids really enjoyed listening to it, and it was very suspenseful. So I definitely recommend reading or listening to Snow Treasure. All right, the next book that we enjoyed is the book The Boy on the Wooden Box. Now, this book, I will say, is probably going to be a little bit too intense for young listeners. So I think for my older kids who are now 9 and 11, they really enjoyed this story. Basically, it's a story of I believe it's a Polish family. Again, it's set during World War II, and they are a Jewish family, and so it kind of shares how his family, moved from their home to an apartment and then were forced into a ghetto, and how he's, separated from his parents. But in the end, it kind of shares how he ended up being one of the names on Schindler's List. So if you're familiar with that, that movie that was made about Schindler's List, it's based on a real true story. And so this boy was one of the people that worked for Mr. Schindler. And, of course, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, there are several parts in this story that are difficult to listen to because of the way that the Jews were treated, and it shares about their hardships there in the ghetto and the way that that they were treated, and their fears and their struggles. And so I did have to pause the story throughout and just this was wrong, or how would you have felt if that was something you were going through, or just kind of asking them good questions and talking about the difficult things that we were learning about his story. But I don't feel like it crossed the line into a place where it was too gory or too much for children to listen to. So he stayed true to his story without making it too much for little kids to hear, if that makes sense. So just a really, really good story. And it's actually a biography. So obviously he survived this ordeal. And I was, after we listened to the story, I was so interested. I actually went on YouTube and I watched a full live interview that he did one time on stage with an audience. And so I kind of got to see him sharing even more details about his story and about his life after he ended up eventually immigrating to America. And so just kind of that, how the contrast between his life during the Holocaust versus his adult life in America. And just super, super interesting story. I definitely recommend giving it a try, even if you decide to maybe pre-read it. If you get the paperback version, you could maybe pre-read a chapter and then read it to your kids a little bit at a time as you feel comfortable. But we enjoyed listening to it on Hoopla, and a really, really well-written book. All right, the next one I wanted to recommend is this one called By the Great Horn Spoon. This is one I've seen recommended several times on various homeschooling mom friends and also different homeschool reading lists and things, and it didn't disappoint. This one was a really funny book. This boy goes off on the California gold rush and hopes that he's going to hit it rich, but he goes with his butler. He goes with the butler, and they set off, and so all kinds of crazy things are happening on the ship. And then when they get to California, they're trying to stake a claim and start panning for gold and all these things. And anyway, tons of hilarious things happen. And the version that we listened to was recorded like with a full cast and like sound effects and music, and it was just like a more of a theatrical version. Instead of just one person reading the whole thing, it had different voice actors for each character, which made it even more fun and compelling to listen to. So definitely a very funny story, a little bit of historical fiction because it is during a period of history that actually happened. But basically it's just a funny story. So I definitely recommend listening to this one on Hoopla if you're able to listen to it, because it was really, really well done. All right, the next story is actually part of a series, but this book is called The Mystery of the Missing Lion. And this is part of a series, I think it's called the Precious Mystery Series, all written by the same author. And it's all about this little girl in Africa, and she's super intelligent, and she's able to solve mysteries. And so in this story, she goes to stay with a relative, I believe it's her aunt. And while she's there visiting her aunt, they are filming a movie. And there is a lion that they're working with for this movie. And during this whole thing, the lion goes missing. And so she and one of her little friends are trying to help the director find this lion. And so it's really, really well written. It's very cute and funny. And just neat to see how she puts all the clues together, and people are really starting to notice like, wow, this little girl is smart. But we really enjoyed listening to this one. The kids always wanted to listen to the next chapter because it kind of leaves you hanging. So yeah, definitely a great one, and I look forward to listening to more books in this series. All right, and then the last book on my recommended list is a book called The Sign of the Beaver. It looks like this right here. And this is actually one that we read aloud. In this story, you have a young boy and his father who go off to stake a claim in some territory that had previously belonged to Native Americans. And so they go out, they stake their claim, they build a rough cabin, they plant some vegetables and things, and then the father leaves, and he leaves his like a preteen aged son alone while he goes back to retrieve the mom and the sister and bring them back. So he's like, I'll be gone this many days. You just need to stay here to make sure nothing happens to our cabin, and keep an eye on the garden and all that stuff, and just you should be fine. You have enough food to take care of yourself. Well, so the boy is counting the days and everything, keeping track of time passing, and doing his best to keep everything running there at their little homestead. And his dad is like delayed, and then he starts to worry, like, what if something happened to him? What if he's not coming back? Like, what if something happened to my mom or my sister? Or he's just going through all these thoughts in his head of like, what happened? And so while he's there, different things transpire, some unfortunate things. And then the main thing in the book that it's focused on is they have these Native Americans that live nearby, and the chief ends up coming over to him and asking him, will you teach I think it's his grandson, son or grandson, I think it's his grandson, how to read and write, because I want him to be able to understand these contracts that the Americans are making us sign. Because the problem was that the Americans were presenting these contracts to the Native Americans and making them sign things they didn't understand fully. And so he wanted his grandson to be literate in English so that they could avoid signing any further contracts that were bad. And so the boy agrees to teach this Native American boy how to read. But the Native American boy is not interested at all. He doesn't care about this white boy. He is very disinterested, and so it just kind of shows the evolution of their relationship and how they end up bonding with each other. and they're both able to teach each other things that are useful. And so yeah, it's an interesting story. It might resonate more with boys versus girls, but for our family, I think we all enjoy reading it together. And so this is definitely one I would recommend you reading as well. All right, so that's gonna be it for today's video. I hope that this gave you some ideas for maybe some books that you can read this coming school year with your family. I definitely plan to continue sharing some homeschool related content here on this channel. We're definitely feeling a little bit more settled. We're expecting the rest of our household goods to be delivered next week. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting everything organized and the rooms all like decorated and things just feeling more settled around here. But I definitely plan to share some more homeschool related videos as we wrap up this school year and start thinking about next school year. So I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you as always for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.